Lily stood still, staring into the darkness of the bedroom, a heavy feeling weighing down on her chest. The faint sounds from the outside seemed to blur, leaving her unable to focus. Her husband, Jack, had been away for a week on a business trip, and tonight, everything felt different. Tonight, she knew things were about to change. She couldn't wait any longer. She felt the loneliness creeping into every corner of her soul. Their relationship had once been full of promise, but over time, it had become a routine, predictable, cold, and distant. Jack had become more of a ghost in her life, someone who no longer truly saw her. She loved him, but it didn't feel the same anymore. What had made her decide to seek comfort outside of her marriage? At first, it was simple, a glance, a kind word, a gesture of care that she hadn't felt in so long from Jack. But tonight, it had become something much stronger, something she couldn't ignore. Lily sighed, picking up her phone from the nightstand. The message from David still lingered on the screen. His name sent a jolt through her chest. She had met him a few months ago at a professional conference, and since then, he had become someone she could not forget. Each time he reached out, a part of her came alive again, the part that longed to feel desired, valued. He made her feel beautiful, wanted, something Jack had stopped making her feel a long time ago. Their messages, their calls, had become a lifeline, something that filled the emptiness she could no longer bear. The message read, "Are you ready? I'm waiting for you." Her heart raced. She could feel the pull of his words, the temptation so strong. It wasn't that she had forgotten Jack, it was just that David made her feel alive again. She had convinced herself that she needed this. She couldn't stay in this house, in this marriage, where everything was suffocating her. Tonight, she would take the step that would change everything. She quickly typed a reply, "I'll be there soon." There was no hesitation. She couldn't keep living in this lie. The darkness in her relationship with Jack had grown so thick that it felt impossible to see the light anymore. She had to choose her own happiness, even if it meant leaving everything else behind. Before she could think any further, the doorbell rang. Her heart skipped a beat, and she froze for a moment. Could it be Jack? No, he wasn't supposed to be back yet. She quickly checked the clock, he wasn't due until much later. Her pulse quickened. Could it be David? The anticipation was almost too much. But when she went to open the door, it wasn't David who stood there. It was Jack, standing in the doorway, his tired eyes looking at her with confusion. She felt a lump form in her throat as she gazed at him. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not now. Not like this. "Hi," Jack said, his voice low and strained. "I'm home early." Lily stared at him, her mind racing. The phone in her hand felt like a foreign object now. The weight of everything she had been hiding pressed on her chest, and for the first time in a long while, she felt exposed, vulnerable. Jack's eyes flicked to the phone in her hand, and she quickly slipped it into her pocket, but it was too late. The tension between them was palpable. She could see the flicker of suspicion in his gaze. He had been away for so long, and now, standing in front of him, she felt like a stranger. "Where have you been?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if he was afraid to speak too loudly, as if everything was unraveling too quickly. Lily opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She couldn't lie to him anymore. She could feel it, this was the moment of reckoning. Would she tell him the truth, or would she continue down this path of betrayal? It felt like there was no turning back. And there, in that quiet moment, as the door closed softly behind him, Lily knew that everything she had worked so hard to keep hidden was about to come crashing down. Lily let out a deep sigh as she stood up from the bed, walking quietly toward the living room, the dim light from the bedside lamp casting faint shadows on the walls. Everything in the house felt still, frozen in time. She hadn't realized how much emptiness had crept into her life until this moment. The quiet was deafening. She hadn't heard Jack's voice in so long, hadn't felt his presence like before. It was as if they had become strangers, drifting further apart each day. She had tried so hard to hold on, to keep everything together, but now, standing in the silence of their home, she couldn't deny the truth anymore. There was nothing left between them. She had been holding on to a memory, to a person who no longer existed. Her marriage to Jack had become a routine, a cold and distant arrangement, and it was suffocating her. The more she tried to ignore it, the more it ate away at her. She thought about their last conversation, the last time they had shared a quiet evening together. Jack had been so focused on his work, and she had felt invisible. The words they exchanged had been few, like echoes of a time when they used to talk for hours, laugh together, dream together. But those days felt so distant now. She had tried to make it work, tried to keep the spark alive, but every effort felt like a weight dragging her down further. Tonight, Lily had made a decision. She couldn't continue like this. She had tried to keep herself busy, to pretend everything was fine, but deep down, she knew she couldn't keep lying to herself. The emptiness had become too much to bear. And then David had come into her life, and for the first time in months, she had felt wanted again, desired. He had made her feel seen, something Jack hadn't done in such a long time. And tonight, as if by fate, David had reached out. Lily picked up her phone again, glancing at the message from him. "Are you ready? I'm waiting." The words on the screen felt like a lifeline, pulling her towards something, someone, who made her feel alive again. It wasn't that she didn't love Jack, it was just that she had lost herself in this marriage. David had reminded her of who she used to be, of the woman who deserved more than this cold silence. She had hesitated at first. But the more she thought about it, the clearer it became. She needed to do this. She needed to feel alive again, to feel like she mattered. And if it meant leaving behind the life she had built with Jack, so be it. Lily's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden ring from her phone. She looked down, expecting to see another message from David, but instead, it was a call from a number she didn't recognize. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure of what to do. Her heart raced. Was it Jack? Had he come back earlier than expected? No, it couldn't be. He wasn't supposed to be back until late. With trembling hands, she answered the call. "Hello." Her voice sounded shaky even to her own ears. "Lily? It's David. I just wanted to check in. Are you still coming?" His voice was smooth, comforting, and for a brief moment, Lily felt a sense of relief. She needed this, needed him. I'll be there soon," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt like a weight lifted off her chest, as if she had finally decided to take control of her life again. Before she could say anything else, there was a soft knock at the door. Lily froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know whether to answer it, to hide, or to face whatever was about to happen. Her thoughts were racing, and before she could process it, she was already walking toward the door. She opened it, expecting to find David standing there, but instead, it was Jack. "Hi," he said quietly, his eyes looking tired and confused. He stood there in the doorway, his presence almost like a physical weight pressing down on her. He didn't expect her to answer the door, not like this. Not now. Lily stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't prepared for this. Not now. Not when she had made up her mind. "Jack." Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke, a lump forming in her throat. She hadn't seen him like this in months. He looked so distant, so unlike the man she once knew. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room, a sense of disbelief in his gaze. "I thought I'd come home early. I missed you. You didn't think I would?" Lily's chest tightened. She could feel the weight of his words, the quiet accusation in his voice. He didn't expect her to be so distant. He didn't understand what had been happening inside her, what had been growing between them for months. "Of course, I missed you," she said softly, but the words felt empty. She didn't know how to tell him the truth. How could she explain the way she had been feeling? How could she confess that she had already begun to slip away, already made plans to leave everything behind? Jack stepped closer, his voice quieter now, as if afraid to break the fragile silence. "Lily, what's going on? You've been so distant. I can feel it. Why won't you talk to me?" Lily opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. She couldn't lie anymore. She couldn't pretend everything was okay. She had already made her decision. And now, in this moment, facing Jack, the truth felt unbearable. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. "I don't know what's left to fix. It's too late, Jack. We're too far gone." The room fell into silence, both of them standing there, each feeling the weight of what had been left unsaid for so long. The space between them had grown too wide, and no amount of words could bridge that gap now. The decision had been made. Lily felt the tension in the air as soon as the door closed behind Jack. The weight of the silence between them was almost suffocating. She stood motionless, still clutching her phone, but this time, it felt like a foreign object in her hands. The thought of David, of her decision to meet him, was still fresh in her mind, but now, standing face to face with Jack, everything felt confusing. The moment she had been preparing for was finally here, but now that it was real, she wasn't sure she was ready for it. Jack's eyes remained on her, searching for answers, his brow furrowed with concern. He wasn't angry, at least not yet, but there was a quiet accusation in his gaze that made her feel smaller with each passing second. "Lily," he said, his voice steady but full of hurt. "What's going on with us? I can feel you pulling away, but you won't say anything. I don't know how to fix this if you don't talk to me." Lily opened her mouth, but no words came out. She had been running from this confrontation for so long, hoping somehow that the distance between them would fix itself, that the space that had grown in their marriage could be bridged by the mere passage of time. But now, faced with Jack's hurt and confusion, it all felt so much more real. "Jack, Lily started, her throat tightening, the words catching in her chest. "I don't know what to say anymore. I don't know if I can fix it either." Jack took a step closer, his voice softer now, a plea hidden in his words. "You don't have to fix everything. We just need to talk. I've been trying to reach you for so long, but it's like you've already checked out." Lily shook her head, her heart aching as she looked at him. She wanted to tell him everything, wanted to explain the emptiness she had been feeling for months, the loneliness that had only grown stronger as time went on. She wanted to tell him about David, about the way he had made her feel seen again, how he had reignited a part of her that she thought had been lost forever. But how could she? How could she tell him that she was already planning to leave? "I don't know if I can be the person you need anymore, Jack," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I've been trying, but I don't think I can keep pretending." Jack's expression shifted, the hurt deepening in his eyes. He looked like he had been struck, but he remained silent, waiting for her to continue, to explain herself. "Lily, please," Jack's voice was almost a whisper now. "If you don't want to be with me, just say it. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep chasing after someone who isn't here anymore." His words hit her like a punch to the stomach. She had been running from this moment for so long, but now that it was here, she didn't have the strength to deny it. She wasn't sure when it had started, when she had begun to drift away, but somewhere along the way, the love they once shared had faded, and no amount of pretending would bring it back. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Jack," Lily said, her voice trembling. "But I can't stay in this silence. In this empty space between us." The silence that followed felt unbearable. Jack didn't know what to say. He wanted to be angry, to demand more from her, but he couldn't. All he could do was stand there, helpless, watching the woman he had loved for so long walk away. "You were my everything, Lily," Jack finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't understand how we got here. How we ended up like this." Lily felt a wave of guilt wash over her, but she couldn't turn back now. She had already made her decision, and as much as it hurt her to see him like this, she knew there was no turning back. "I don't know, Jack," she whispered, her tears beginning to fall. "But I don't think we can go back. I don't think I can." The room seemed to shrink around them, the distance between them growing impossibly wide. Jack took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears, but he couldn't. It hurt too much. He had tried to hold on, tried to fix something that was already broken. And now, in this moment, he knew it was over. "Then maybe this is it," Jack said, his voice quiet but final. "Maybe we're done. Maybe we've been done for a long time." Lily couldn't respond. She couldn't find the words to fix this, to change what had already been broken. All she could do was nod, her heart shattering into pieces as she watched him turn and walk away. She stood there in the silence that followed, staring at the door he had just walked through. The finality of it all settled over her like a heavy weight. It was done. Jack was gone. And even though she knew she had made the right decision for herself, it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. For the first time in months, Lily felt truly alone. The door closed softly behind Jack, and Lily stood there for a moment, frozen, her hand still resting on the doorknob. The silence felt like it was closing in around her, thick and suffocating. She could hear the sound of her heartbeat, loud and unsteady, a stark contrast to the quiet that now filled the house. She had expected this moment to feel like some kind of release, like the weight of the decision she'd made would lighten her soul. But instead, it felt heavier than ever before. Jack was gone, but his absence left a void that felt impossible to fill. The truth was, she hadn't just lost him, she had lost herself too. All those months of trying to avoid the inevitable, of pretending she could live in a marriage that had long since faded, had led her to this moment. But now that it was here, she didn't feel relief, she felt broken. Lily walked slowly to the living room, her footsteps quiet against the hardwood floor. She glanced at the empty space where Jack used to sit every evening. That chair, once filled with his presence, was now vacant, and it made everything seem so final. It hit her all at once, the weight of the truth, the enormity of what she had just done. She reached for her phone again, but this time, it felt distant, disconnected from the urgency she had felt earlier. She had texted David, agreed to meet him, but now she was uncertain. She wasn't sure if it was guilt, or fear, or just the overwhelming sadness of the situation, but something inside her was telling her to stop, to breathe, to think. Lily sat down on the couch, her eyes scanning the empty room. Everything felt so still. She felt like she was in a vacuum, her mind racing with thoughts of what she had just done. Could she really walk away from her entire life with Jack, from everything they had built together? She had spent years with him, shared dreams, hopes, and so many quiet moments. How could it all slip away so easily? And yet, the emptiness inside her had grown too large to ignore. She had tried so hard to make it work, to hold on to something that was slipping through her fingers. The love she had once felt for Jack wasn't gone, but it was buried beneath layers of unspoken words, unmet needs, and years of silent distance. She had become a stranger in her own home, and even though she still cared for him, she didn't know how to find her way back. The phone buzzed in her hand, pulling her from her thoughts. She looked down, seeing David's name once again on the screen. Her heart skipped a beat, a mix of guilt and longing flooding her chest. She had been waiting for this moment, but now it felt like the last step into the unknown, into a place where she wasn't sure she could return from. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. But then, without thinking, she pressed the button to answer the call. "Lily," David's voice came through, warm and reassuring, "are you okay? I've been waiting. I'm here, whenever you're ready." Lily's breath hitched, and for a moment, she couldn't find the words. She had wanted this so badly, but now that it was here, she was unsure. There was no going back from this. I'm not sure, David, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know what to do. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then David spoke softly, his words understanding yet firm. Lily, you don't have to have all the answers right now. I'm not going anywhere. But you deserve to make a choice that's right for you, not because of guilt, but because it's what you need. She let out a shaky breath. She had wanted this, craved it, but now she wasn't sure. I've already hurt him, David, she whispered. I've hurt Jack, and I don't know if I can live with that. David's voice softened, a tone of empathy in his words. You've done what you thought was best for you, and sometimes, that means making difficult choices. But you can't keep living in the past, Lily. You have to move forward. Her hand tightened around the phone as she stood up, pacing the room, unable to sit still. She had been running from herself, from the decisions she had made, for so long. She had been running from Jack, from the painful truth that she had outgrown their marriage. But now, as she faced the reality of the situation, she realized there was no escaping the consequences of her actions. I need time, she said, her voice shaking. I need to think. I don't know what I want anymore. David was quiet for a moment before responding. Take all the time you need, Lily. I'll be here when you're ready. But remember, you can't keep running forever. The words hung in the air between them, and Lily felt a chill settle in her bones. She knew he was right. She couldn't keep hiding from the truth, from herself, from what she had done. But she wasn't sure if she was strong enough to face it head-on. Thank you, she whispered, feeling both relieved and terrified. The call ended, and Lily stood there in the empty room, feeling more lost than ever. The choice had been made, but the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. She had to face the consequences, whatever they might be, and somehow, find a way to move forward. But the road ahead was unclear, and Lily wasn't sure if she was ready to walk it. The door closed quietly behind Jack, and Lily stood still for a moment, her hand still on the doorknob. The silence that filled the room felt suffocating, heavy, like the weight of everything that had just happened was pressing down on her chest. She had expected this moment to feel like relief, a weight lifted off her shoulders, but instead, it felt like the walls were closing in on her. Jack was gone, but the void he left behind was deeper than she could have ever imagined. She hadn't just lost him, she had lost herself too. Everything she had built with him, all the years they had shared, seemed like they were slipping through her fingers. She thought she had wanted this, but now, alone in their empty house, she wasn't so sure. Lily slowly walked into the living room, her steps echoing in the silence. She glanced at the space where Jack used to sit, the place where they would once talk, laugh, or simply be together. That spot, once filled with warmth and life, was now just an empty chair, a symbol of everything that had changed. She sank down onto the couch, staring at the wall, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of which seemed to make sense. She had made a choice, but now she was filled with uncertainty. She had chosen to leave Jack, but she hadn't expected it to feel this heavy. She hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Her phone buzzed in her hand, snapping her out of her thoughts. She looked down at the screen, David's name flashed there again. The same name that had brought her comfort, had made her feel alive again. She had been waiting for this moment, but now, holding the phone, she wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. With a shaky hand, she answered the call. Hello. Lily, it's David, his voice came through, warm and reassuring. Are you okay? I've been waiting. We can meet whenever you're ready. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had been waiting for this call, but now that it had come, she felt more conflicted than ever. I'm not sure, she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know what to do." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then David's voice softened, a note of understanding in his words. "Lily, you don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But I'm here when you are. No pressure." She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. She had made this decision, but it felt like a leap into the unknown. Everything was so uncertain, and the guilt, the weight of what she had just done, was crushing her. How could she walk away from Jack, from everything they had built? How could she be so sure of something, when deep down, she wasn't? "I've hurt him," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've hurt Jack. And I don't know if I can live with that." David's voice came through again, calm and patient. "You've done what you felt was right for you, Lily. Sometimes, we make choices that we need in order to move forward, even if it hurts." "I don't know if I can do this," Lily said, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if I can just move on like this." David's words were gentle but firm. "You don't have to move on overnight. But you do have to face it. You can't keep running from what you need." Her chest tightened, and the weight of the decision she had made settled on her shoulders like 1,000 pounds. She wasn't sure what was right anymore, and the more she tried to sort through her emotions, the more tangled they became. The pain of leaving Jack, the guilt of betraying him, the fear of the unknown, it was all too much. "I need time," she said finally, her voice cracking. "I need time to think." "I understand," David replied softly. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere, but when you're ready, I'll be here." The words hung in the air between them, and Lily felt the weight of them pressing down on her chest. She knew he was right. She had to face the reality of what she had done, and she had to find a way to move forward. But she wasn't sure if she was ready to let go of everything, or if she was ready to face the consequences of her choices. "I'll call you later," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The call ended, and Lily was left alone in the stillness of the room, her heart heavy with the burden of what she had just done. She had made a choice, but the path ahead seemed more unclear than ever. She couldn't go back, but she didn't know how to go forward either. The only thing she knew for sure was that, for better or worse, her life had changed forever.